The Valerian Empire's diplomatic cruiser came out of hyperspace in a flash of violet light. The ship was called the Eternal Dominion, and it was so huge it looked like a city made of dark metal. Its outer walls were covered in symbols of conquest. Along the sides of the ship were skulls from 100 different species, mounted in perfect rows. That was not decoration, it was strategy. Everything about the ship had one purpose: make others afraid before a single word was spoken. Ambassador Krellix stood in the main chamber, preparing himself. He was 8 feet tall, with dark green scales and eyes that glowed like hot coals. Across his chest were ceremonial ribbons, each one representing a species that had surrendered to the Empire. He had 47 ribbons. He was proud of every single one. "Are the humans ready?" he asked. His assistant bowed his head. "Yes, Ambassador. They are waiting in docking Bay 7. Krellix nodded slowly. He had done this many times before. Not personally, of course, but his people had. The Valerian Empire had been conquering species for 12,000 years. They had a system, and that system always worked. First, arrive in a ship that looks impossible to fight. Second, give a speech that crushes hope. Third, accept surrender. Simple. Krellix walked toward the docking bay with his guards behind him. They were almost as tall as he was, covered in heavy armor, carrying red energy rifles that glowed like fresh wounds. Their boots hit the metal floor in perfect rhythm. Everything about them said the same thing: be afraid. The docking bay doors opened. Krellix stepped forward, ready to meet the humans. He had read the reports on them. Humans were a young species, only 300 years in space. They controlled just 47 systems. Their military numbers were small. Their territory was limited. This was supposed to be easy. But the second he saw them, he felt something shift inside him. Because the humans were not afraid. They were standing beside a small shuttle, talking casually as if they were waiting for a late transport. They were plain blue jumpsuits. No armor. No visible weapons. No formal diplomatic robes. Point one of them, a woman with dark hair tied back, lifted a hand and waved. "Hi," she said brightly. "You must be the Valorants. Come on in." Krellix stopped for half a breath. This was not how first contact was supposed to go. Still, he continued. He rose to his full height, spread his arms wide, pulled his shoulders back. Behind him, his guards moved into formation with perfect timing. Even the docking bay lights dimmed automatically, making the moment look more dramatic. He let the silence build. Then he spoke. "I am Ambassador Krellix of the Valerian Empire," he said, his voice deep and thunderous. "We are the conquerors of galaxies. We are the masters of 1,000 worlds. We have brought 847 species under our rule. For 12,000 years, we have expanded across the stars, unstoppable and eternal." He paused. This was usually the moment when fear appeared. This was usually the moment when species understood what stood before them. This was usually the moment when surrender began. But the humans were looking at each other. Point one of them, an older man with gray hair, had his hand over his mouth. His shoulders were shaking. Krellix continued. "Your species is young. Your species is weak. You cannot stand against us. But we are merciful. Surrender now, and you will be allowed to live as part of our empire. Refuse, and you will be destroyed. You have one standard cycle to decide." He finished. Then he waited for silence, for panic, for pleading, for the first signs of collapse. Instead, the woman made a strange sound, like she was choking on air. Then Krellix realized what it was. She was laughing. The gray-haired man started laughing too. Then another human. Then another. Within seconds, the entire human delegation was laughing so hard some of them had to bend over. One wiped tears from his eyes. Another turned away, trying and failing to calm down. Krellix stood completely still. In 12,000 years of Imperial history, this had never happened. Not once. The woman finally tried to catch her breath. "I'm sorry," she said between laughs. "I'm so sorry. But you guys are adorable." Krellix stared at her. "Adorable?" he repeated slowly. He knew the word, had just never heard it used during a surrender demand. "Yeah," said another human, still laughing. "The whole thing. The skull ship. The lighting. The giant speech. It's like watching children play villain." We honestly thought this was a joke, said the gray-haired man. Like some kind of old historical show. Are you guys doing a performance? Another human asked. Because if you are, the commitment is incredible. Krellix felt something he had never felt in a first contact meeting, that he felt insulted. This is not a joke, he snapped. We are the Valerian Empire. We have conquered 847 species. Yeah, the woman said, trying to calm herself. We heard you the first time. She took a slow breath and straightened up. Okay, let me start over. I'm Captain Sarah Chun. This is my diplomatic team, and I'm trying very hard to be professional right now. But you have to understand how this looks to us. Krellix narrowed his eyes. How does it look? Sarah shrugged. Like a theme park attraction. The skulls, the glowing weapons, the dramatic speech, the whole surrender or die thing. We have movies with bad guys less dramatic than this. We are not dramatic, Krellix growled. We are feared across the galaxy. That only made the humans laugh again. Sarah lifted both hands. Okay. Sorry. You're clearly serious. Let me ask a real question. You came here expecting us to surrender? Yes. And you've done this to hundreds of other species? Yes. And they all gave in? Eventually. Sarah looked at her team, then back at Krellix. Oh, she said softly. That explains a lot. What does that mean? Krellix asked coldly. It means you really don't know who you're talking to. Krellix's tail twitched in irritation. Explain. Sarah picked up the strange container in her hand and took a sip. The smell was sharp and bitter. Tell me something, she said. Out of all the species you've conquered, how many did you actually have to fight? I mean, really fight. Not scare. Not pressure. Not bully. Fight. Krellix considered the question. Perhaps 50, he said at last. Most surrender when they see our power. Sarah nodded slowly. In the longest war? 12 years. Another slow nod. Okay, she said. And you think that makes you impressive? It makes us the greatest empire in known space. Sarah raised an eyebrow. Known space according to who? Krellix frowned. Our maps. Our explorers. Have you gone beyond the Perseus Arm? No, but that region near the galactic core is dangerous. Sarah finished for him. Impossible? Too unstable. Yes. Sarah gave a small shrug. We have 3 research stations there. Krellix blinked. She continued casually. We've had them there for 50 years. For the first time since entering the bay, Krellix did not know what to say. The radiation alone would kill any biological life, he said. Usually, yes, Sarah replied. That's why we built around it. Shielding, adapted systems, layered habitat shells. Pain in the neck, but worth it. Krellix stared at her. That was not possible, or at least, it should not have been possible for a species with only 47 systems. Sarah's face changed then. The amusement was still there, but something more serious moved under it. Listen to me carefully, she said. I'm going to give you advice, and I really hope you listen. Krellix folded his arms. Advice? Yes, Sarah said. Go home. Forget you ever met us. Tell your empire humanity is not worth the trouble. Leave now. Krellix felt his scales tighten. Is that a threat? No, Sarah said quietly. It's a warning. One of the other humans, the gray-haired man, had stopped smiling too. He looked almost sad. You came here thinking you found prey, Sarah said. You didn't. You found something you're not ready for. Krellix let out a harsh breath through his teeth. You control 47 systems. We control thousands. You cannot threaten us. We're not threatening you, said the gray-haired man. We're trying to protect you. Krellix stared at him. Protect us? Yes. That answer offended him even more than the laughter. You are primitives, Krellix said. You have no major military presence. Your fleets are small. Your war capability is limited. Sarah nodded once. Do you know why our military is small? Because you are weak. Sarah shook her head. No, because we don't need a big one. Krellix said nothing. She went on. We haven't fought a real war in 200 years. For the first time, Krellix smiled. Then you have grown soft. You have forgotten how to fight. The humans looked at one another, but they did not look ashamed. They looked tired. That a strange, bitter sadness passed across Sarah's face. That, she said softly, is what we hoped. Krellix's smile faded. Sarah lowered her voice. "We really hoped we had forgotten. But if you push this, we're about to find out whether that's true." The gray-haired man spoke again, his voice flat now. "And honestly, that scares us more than it should scare you." Krellix had heard enough. The whole conversation had become absurd. They laughed, they warned, they insulted, they spoke in riddles. None of it changed the truth. The Valerian Empire was stronger. The Valerian Empire always won. "You have one cycle to surrender," he said. "After that, we will return with our fleet." He turned and began walking back toward his ship. His guards followed without speaking. Behind him, he heard Sarah say quietly to her team, "Get me a line to Earth. We need to warn them. The Empire has no idea what it's starting." The docking bay doors began to close. Krellix looked back one last time. The humans were no longer laughing. They looked serious now. Concerned. Worried. Good, he thought. Now they understand. But as the doors sealed shut, a small voice rose in the back of his mind at a question he could not shake. If the humans were afraid, why did they look afraid for him? Krellix stood before the Supremacy Council on the Imperial Throne World 3 days later. The chamber was massive, carved from black stone and lit by coal blue fire. 12 council members sat on high thrones, looking down at him. They were the rulers of the Valerian Empire. They had conquered for thousands of years, and they were not used to bad news. High Chancellor Vormik, the oldest among them, leaned forward. His scales had faded with age, but his eyes were still sharp. "Explain yourself," he said. "You returned without a surrender. This is unprecedented." Krellix kept his head lowered for a moment. Then he answered, "The humans laughed at us." Silence fell over the chamber. Vormika's gaze sharpened. "They what?" "They laughed," Krellix repeated. "They called us adorable. They mocked our ship. They said our speech sounded like children pretending to be villains." Angry hissing rose from several council seats. "This is an insult to the Empire," one council member said. "I agree," Krellix replied. "But there is more." The chamber quieted. He continued carefully. "Their leader, Captain Sarah Chun, warned me to leave. She told me to forget we ever met them. She said it will be better for us." "A threat?" another council member asked. "No," Krellix said. "She said it was for our protection, not theirs." That earned a few cold laughs from the council. Vormik tapped one claw against his throne. "And what do you recommend, Ambassador?" Krellix hesitated. He did not like the answer he was about to give. He did not like how weak it sounded. But he trusted the fear sitting quietly in his chest. "I recommend caution," he said at last. "We should study humanity further before taking action." The chamber erupted. "Caution? Over a minor species? They mocked us, and you asked for patience." Vormik rose slowly to his feet. His voice became hard as stone. "We show caution to no one." Krellix forced himself to continue. "High Chancellor, there is something wrong here. They were not afraid. They spoke as though you were dismissed, Ambassador." Krellix stopped. Vormik looked down at him with blazing eyes. "Send the intimidation fleet," the Chancellor ordered. "We will show these humans the power of the Valerian Empire. Then they will understand what fear means." Krellix bowed his head, but inside, the unease only grew. Because for the first time in his life, the Empire was marching toward an enemy he did not understand. And deep down, he feared the humans had told the truth. 3 days later, 200 Valerian warships came out of hyperspace around Earth. 200 Valerian warships hung above Earth like a wall of iron. They formed a perfect ring around the planet, each ship armed with plasma cannons, missile batteries, and enough firepower to burn cities from orbit. Against most species, the sight alone would have ended the war before it began. Admiral Tsar stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched the blue world below. Earth was beautiful. Blue oceans. White clouds. Bright city lights on the dark side of the planet. Peaceful. Too peaceful. He opened a channel on every frequency the humans used. "Humans of Earth," he announced, his voice shaking the bridge speakers. "This is Admiral Tsar of the Valerian Empire. You are surrounded. You cannot escape. You cannot hide. Surrender now, or your world will burn. You have one planetary rotation to comply." He ended the message and folded his hand behind his back. Now, he thought, the fear would begin. Now they would understand. Now they would break. But on Earth, Something else happened at T first. There was confusion. Then people replayed the broadcast. Then someone put dramatic music under it. Then someone edited Admiral Czar's face onto a dancing costume. Then someone made his voice squeaky. Within an hour, the surrender speech had spread across human networks. Thousands of edits appeared. Some were jokes. Some were songs. Some turned the Valorians into cartoon villains. News channels played the clip on repeat. Comedy shows built full episodes around it. One late night host stood in front of a giant screen showing Admiral Czar's threatening face. "They think they're terrifying," the host said, shaking his head. 200 ships? That's cute. We've got grocery companies with better logistics than that. The audience roared with laughter. In another city, stores started printing shirts. "I survived the angry space lizard." Mugs appeared too. "Surrender, or I'll burn if one colony world." New Austin sent back an official reply that simply read, "New phone." Who dis Admiral Czar watched all of this through intercepted communications and felt the same cold unease Krelix had described. He had expected panic. He had expected evacuation traffic, military scrambling, desperate leaders begging for more time. Instead, humans were making jokes, not because they did not understand the danger, because they did, and still were not afraid. That a communications officer stepped closer. "Sir, we are receiving an official message from Earth." Czar turned sharply. "Put it through." The screen at the front of the bridge lit up. An old human appeared. He wore a dark military uniform covered in medals. His hair was white. His face was lined with age, but his eyes were clear, sharp, and deeply tired. "I am General Kowalski," the man said. "United Nations Defense Force. I'm told you're waiting for our surrender." Czar straightened. "T last. Someone serious." "Yes," the admiral said. "Have you come to accept our terms?" "No, Kowalski Diplaith. I've come to give you one chance to leave." Several Valerian officers hissed in anger. Czar let out a low laugh. "Leave? We scanned your system. You have fewer than 100 military vessels. We have 200 in this fleet alone, and thousands more behind us. What exactly do you believe you can do?" Kowalski did not answer right away. Instead, he studied Czar with the expression of a man looking at someone standing too close to the edge of a cliff. "That," Kowalski said quietly, "is exactly the problem." Czar frowned. "Explain." "You looked at our military and decided we were weak," Kowalski said. "You saw a small standing fleet and assumed that was the limit of our strength. It isn't." "Then why is it so small?" Czar demanded. "Because we don't need a larger one." Czar almost smiled. "You mean because you haven't fought in 200 years?" Kowalski's expression darkened. "Yes," he said. "We haven't fought a real war in 200 years." "Then you have grown soft." For the first time, something moved in the human general's face. Not anger, not fear, regret. "I wish that were true," Kowalski said. Czar felt a flicker of discomfort. The general leaned slightly closer to the camera. "Do you know our military spending?" "Yes," Czar replied. "It is pathetic. Barely a fraction of your economy." "And do you understand what that means?" Czar did not answer. Kowalski answered for him. "It means almost all of our economy is doing something else. Building, designing, moving resources, creating machines, expanding industry. We have civilian shipyards larger than your naval yards. We have factories on every developed world. We have transport systems that move more metal in a week than most empires move in a year. Resources mean nothing without warriors," Czar said. Though his voice had lost some of its certainty, Kowalski nodded once. "That's where you made your second mistake," he said. "You assumed peace made us harmless." The bridge had gone completely silent. N01 moved. N01 interrupted. "What are you trying to say?" Czar asked. Kowalski looked at him for a long moment. Then he said, "How many species have you conquered?" 847. "And how many truly resisted?" Czar hesitated. "About 50. "And your longest war?" 12 years. Kowalski took a slow breath. "Do you know how long humans fought each other before we reached space?" "No." 10,000 years. Czar said nothing. Kowalski kept going. "We fought on one planet for longer than your empire has existed in its current form. We fought with blades, with fire, with poison, with machines. We built weapons powerful enough to destroy our own world and aimed them at ourselves. We lived for decades knowing one mistake could end everything. The Admiral's claws tightened against the arm of his chair. That is impossible. No, Kowalski said. It's history. He leaned back slightly. We didn't become one people because we were wise. We became one people because we finally scared ourselves enough to stop. We chose peace. We chose restraint. We chose to build something better. His voice grew colder. But choosing peace is not the same thing as forgetting war. Tsar now understood why Krellix had returned unsettled, why Captain Shun had warned them, why the humans laughed. Because from their point of view, the Valerian Empire was not frightening, it was naive. You are attempting to intimidate me, Tsar said. Kowalski shook his head. No, I'm trying to save your people. The Admiral stared at him. Kowalski's eyes did not waver. You came here looking for prey, the old general said. Instead, you found predators who spent 2 centuries pretending they weren't predators anymore. If you attack us, if you force us to remember what we were built for, then you're going to learn something we have tried very hard to forget. And what is that? Tsar asked. Almost against his will, Kowalski's answer came without hesitation. How good we are at war. The screen went dark, and no one on the bridge spoke for several seconds. Admiral Tsar sat completely still. Then he opened a private channel to the throne world. High Chancellor Vormik appeared a few moments later, seated on his black stone throne. Report, the Chancellor said. Sir did not waste time. I recommend immediate withdrawal. Vormika's eyes narrowed. Explain. The humans are not what they appear. Their military may be small, but their confidence is not false. Both their diplomats and their military leadership warned us to leave. I believe attacking them would be a grave mistake. A mistake, Vormik repeated. You command 200 warships over a world with fewer than 100 military vessels. What could they possibly do? Tsar hated that he had no clear answer. I don't know, he admitted, but I do not wish to find out. Vormika's voice turned cold as frozen steel. Your concern is noted and dismissed. If they do not surrender when the deadline ends, begin bombardment of military targets. Show them the price of defiance. High Chancellor, the order stands. The channel ended. Tsar sat there, staring at the dead screen. Below him, Earth kept turning. Cities stayed lit. Traffic moved through orbit. Civilian ships followed their normal routes. The humans knew he was there. They had heard his ultimatum. And yet life continued. Not because they were foolish, because somehow they had already made peace with what might happen next. That troubled him more than anything. Every species feared the Valerian fleet. Fear was normal. Fear made sense. But humans did not look afraid. They looked disappointed. And that feeling followed Admiral Tsar long after the channel had closed. Ambassador Krellix could not sleep. The meeting with Captain Sarachon kept replaying in his mind. Her laughter, her warning, the strange sadness in General Kowalski's face. The way the humans had looked concerned not for themselves, but for the Empire. That was wrong. It made no sense that S.O. Krellix decided he needed answers. The Valerian Empire had a research division dedicated to studying conquered species. They analyzed biology, culture, psychology, technology, anything that might reveal weakness. Krellix sent a request for everything they had on humanity. The response came the next day, not in a file that I in a direct summons. Ambassador, come to the research facility immediately. You need to see this. Krellix arrived within the hour. The facility was in chaos. Scientists moved quickly between glowing displays. Data scrolled across walls. Several researchers were pale, trembling, speaking in rushed whispers. Research Director Sithril stood waiting for him near the main central screen. The director's scales looked faded. His hands were shaking. What did you find? Krellix asked. Sithril looked at him with hollow eyes. Everything, he said. The humans gave us access to their historical archives. Krellix frowned. They gave them to you? Yes. Why? Sithril swallowed hard. I think they wanted us to understand what we were doing. He activated the main display. Numbers filled the screen, dates, casualty counts, maps of old conflicts. Humans have only been in space for 300 years, Sithril began. Before that, they were trapped on a single world. I know this. Yes, Sithril said. What we didn't understand is what they did on that world. The display changed as a single number appeared, huge and bright. 1, 200, 000, 000, Krellick stared. What is that? Estimated human death from humans fighting humans across recorded history. The ambassador blinked slowly. That cannot be correct. We checked across multiple archives, Sithril said. It is correct. Krellick looked back at the number 1.2 billion. That was more than the total population of many species the Empire had conquered. And these deaths had not come from invasion, not from alien attack, not from a collapsing star or plague. Humans had done it to themselves. Show me. Sithril obeyed. The first image appeared, a city below a giant cloud shaped like a rising mushroom. This is a nuclear weapon, Sithril said. Humans created it before they reached space. It splits atoms and releases enormous energy. This single device destroyed a city. Over 100,000 dead in moments. Krellick stared at the image. They used this on an enemy world? Sithril was silent for a beat. On themselves. Krellick turned to him slowly. What? Twice, Sithril said. 2 cities. 2 bombs. Then they built thousands more. Another researcher stepped forward, voice barely steady. At one point, they had enough nuclear weapons to destroy their whole planet many times over. Krellick felt suddenly unbalanced. But then they would die too. Yes, Sithril said. Why would they build such things? The director's answer came softly. To make sure no one else used theirs first. Krellick sat down heavily. There was no honor in that. In logic, in clean-structured, IT was madness. What kind of species threatens itself in a peace? He whispered. Sithril changed the display again. Maps. Battlefields. Casualty charts. Old photos. This was one war on their homeworld, he said. It lasted 6 years. Somewhere between 70 and 85 million dead. Krellick's throat tightened. One war? One. Another researcher spoke up. They built camps to imprison civilians. They used poison gas. They burned entire cities. They targeted supply lines, farms, factories, hospitals, transport routes. Their warfare spread into every part of life. The young researcher stopped speaking, unable to continue. Sithril took over again. They did not only fight armies, he said. They learned to fight economies, morale, infrastructure, information, and fear itself. Krellick stared at the wall of data. The Valerian Empire had always viewed war as controlled, ceremonial, structured. There were rules. There was order. There was dignity. Humans seemed to have ignored all of that. They fought as if the only thing that mattered was winning before they were destroyed. Show me their weapons development. A timeline appeared. Stone blades, bronze spears, iron swords, gunpowder, cannons, rifles, machine guns, tanks, chemical weapons, biological weapons, nuclear missiles, orbital systems, space combat doctrine. The line moved faster and faster. For comparison, Sithril said, it took our civilization 40,000 years to move from primitive tools to advanced energy weapons. Humanity did it in less than a third of that time. Ow! Sithril's answer was immediate. War. The word hung in the room. Conflict forced innovation. Every time they fought, they became more efficient. Every time they were threatened, they invented something worse. Krellick looked back at the timeline that IT was not a history of progress. IT was a history of pressure, of survival, of adaptation under constant violence. What happened after the nuclear era? He asked. They stepped back, Sithril said. Not because they became harmless, because they understood that another full war might end everything. The display changed again. Now it showed humans fighting in rings, arenas, training halls, boxing, wrestling, martial arts, then racing vehicles at terrifying speed, climbing mountains with little protection, jumping from aircraft, diving into deep water with predators nearby. They still chase danger, one researcher said quietly. For recreation, another display appeared. War films, strategy games, military simulations, children moving toy soldiers across floors, young humans playing video games built around battle, tactics, and victory. Their entertainment is filled with conflict, Sithril said. Even in peace, they keep war alive in stories, games, and training patterns. Krelix watched a recording of human children barely past infancy, commanding virtual armies in a game. They are young, he said. Yes, Sithril replied. And yet they already think in terms of maneuver, pressure, defense, attack, sacrifice, timing. They teach their children war? Not directly, Sithril said, but war is buried in their culture. Deeply, Krelix felt something cold slide down his spine. They never forgot. No, Sithril said. They just gave the memory safer places to live. The ambassador stood and walked toward the great window at the far end of the lab. Outside, the capital glittered. Beautiful towers, perfect roads, ordered peace, an empire built over thousands of years. Behind him, Sithril kept speaking. We also reviewed their current military structure. It is small, yes, but the training quality is extreme. Their soldiers train across every environment: vacuum, water, heat, ice, radiation, low gravity, close quarters. Their officer schools study thousands of years of battle records. Their strategic culture assumes every enemy can adapt. Krelix turned back. Meaning they do not prepare for weak opponents, Sithril said. They prepare for worse opponents than the ones they have already faced. Silence followed. Then Krelix asked the question he already feared. What is your assessment? Sithril hesitated. Then he answered with brutal honesty. Every species we conquered had peace in its recent past. Enough peace to forget war. Enough peace to become soft. Enough peace to be shocked by invasion. He looked directly at Krelix. Humans also had peace, but they did not forget. The room went still. If we attack them, Sithril said, we will not be fighting a peaceful species learning war for the first time. We will be fighting a species with 10,000 years of war behind it. A species that has already survived itself. Another researcher stepped forward nervously. I found something else, she said. Human writings, philosophers, military thinkers. Read one, Krelix said. She swallowed. One human wrote, peace is not proof that we are harmless. It is proof that we choose every day not to use what we know. Another line appeared beside it. The most dangerous fighter is not the one who loves war, but the one who has seen enough of it to hate it and still knows how to win. Krelix closed his eyes for a moment. Captain Sarachen's face rose in his mind. Go home. Forget you ever met us. Please. He opened his eyes again. Send all of this to the Supremacy Council. Sithril gave a bitter laugh that held no humor. I already did. And they dismissed it. Krelix stared. On what grounds? They say the humans are bluffing. They believe the historical archives were edited to frighten us. High Chancellor Vormik called it fear propaganda. Krelix felt anger rise for the first time. It is not propaganda. I know, Sithril said, but the council does not believe it. He paused. Then he added the part Krelix already knew he would hate. They have launched a punishment armada. Krelix went still. Where? New Toronto, Sithril said. A human colony world. Population roughly 3 million. When? Sithril looked at the clock display. They should be arriving now. No one in the research chamber spoke. All around them, the data screens still showed human history. The bombs, the wars, the numbers, the scale of violence that made 12,000 years of Valerian conquest feel suddenly small. That a young researcher whispered what everyone else was thinking. The humans try to warn us. Krelix looked out the window again, but this time the capital no longer looked permanent. It looked fragile. And very far away, across the stars, 500 Valerian warships were dropping out of hyperspace above New Toronto. The Valerian Punishment Armada arrived at New Toronto with 500 warships. They came out of hyperspace in perfect formation, a dark storm of metal and weapons spreading across the colony sky. At the center of the fleet was the flagship of Fleet Commander Draxer, a veteran officer with a long record of victories and a reputation for absolute discipline. He had been given simple orders. Make an example. Show the humans what defiance costs. New Toronto was supposed to be easy. It was a small colony world with a population of only 3 million. Its defenses were light. A few orbital stations, a small patrol fleet. Nothing that could survive a real Imperial strike. Draxer studied the tactical display with calm confidence. This would be over in hours. Begin orbital bombardment, he ordered. Target military sites first, then infrastructure. Break their ability to resist. The fleet fired as plasma bolts tore down from orbit like falling suns. Military compounds vanished in fire. Defensive platforms shattered into glowing wreckage. Power plants exploded. Communications towers collapsed. The colony's main dam burst under repeated impact, sending black water racing through valleys below. Cities went dark. Panic spread across the surface. Then a distress signal went out. Weak at first, broken by static, but still clear enough to understand. "This is New Toronto," a human voice said. "We are under attack." They came without warning. Civilian areas are hit. "Please." The signal cut off. Draxer watched the screen for a moment, then nodded once. "Send ground forces. Secure the capital. This world is now property of the Valerian Empire." To him, this was war fast, clean, effective. He did not know that on Earth, people were listening. Inside the United Nations Emergency Council chamber, the final seconds of New Toronto's distress call echoed through the room. Then silence. N01 moved. N01 spoke that on the central display, the colony's live feed was gone. In its place was a frozen, tactical image of fires spreading across the planet's surface. General Kowalski stood with both hands on the table. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and heavy. 3 million civilians, he said. They hit civilians. The Secretary General looked at him. "Your recommendation?" Kowalski closed his eyes for a brief moment, as if bracing himself against something old and terrible. Then he looked up. "For 200 years, he said, we locked the war machine away. We told ourselves we had changed. We focused on science, art, trade, exploration. We built instead of destroying. We tried to become something better." He looked around the room. "But they attacked our people. They bombed civilians. They made the choice for us." He took one slow breath. "I recommend total war." The words hit the room like a shockwave, and O1 misunderstood them. Total war. Two words humanity had not used in 2 centuries. The Secretary General swallowed. "All in favor?" Every hand rose. No debate. No hesitation. No1 wanted this, but no one argued. "Then it is authorized," the Secretary General said. "General Kowalski, you have full permission to activate the war protocols." Kowalski nodded once, not with triumph, with grief, and somewhere deep in the human systems, old locks began to open. What happened next on the Valerian Empire? Across human space, whole industries changed direction overnight. Factories that made civilian vehicles began building armored carriers. Construction yards shifted to artillery production. Mining companies rerouted raw materials directly to military contracts. Civilian shipyards, the same ones that built liners, freight vessels, and deep space transports, started turning out warships. There was no chaos and no confusion in a long political struggle. The change happened with terrifying speed, as if the system had always known what to do. Because in a way it had. Humanity had not destroyed its war machine. IT had buried it beneath ordinary life. And now it was waking up in the first week. Human shipyards produced 1,000 warships. In the first month, that number became 10,000. They poured out of orbital yards, asteroid factories, lunar docks, and converted civilian platforms. Corvettes, destroyers, carriers, missile ships, heavy cruisers. New hulls appeared so quickly that some Valerian analysts thought the numbers had to be wrong. They were not wrong. They were simply too small. On the Imperial throne world, High Chancellor Vormik slammed both claws against the council table. "Where are they getting the materials?" he demanded. An intelligence analyst answered shakily. "From everywhere. Their civilian sectors are fully integrated. They're not building a war economy from nothing. They are converting an existing industrial system that is already larger than ours. How fast can they continue?" The analyst checked the latest reports and looked visibly ill. "At current rates, indefinitely for the near term. They already have more manufacturing output in active war production than our empire has total naval construction. The chamber fell silent. Vormik stared at the reports as if numbers alone might surrender if glared hard enough. But the ships were only the beginning. The real shock came when the first fleets met. The Valerian Empire fought war the same way it had for thousands of years, with structure, with tradition, with rules. There were formal challenges, organized formations, honorable engagements, clear declarations, accepted battlefield conduct. To the Empire, war was not merely violence. It was a system, a disciplined art. Humans did not fight that way. Humans fought to win at the Battle of Arcturus Station. Fleet Commander Draxler finally met a major human response force. His ships formed into a classic wedge formation, sharp and disciplined, designed to break enemy lines with concentrated forward force. Before advancing, as tradition demanded, he sent a formal combat challenge. He expected a clear reply. Perhaps a matching formation, perhaps a negotiated battlefield structure, perhaps at least the courtesy of predictability. Instead, the human fleet split apart. Half their ships jumped into hyperspace. The other half turned and retreated. Draxler saw the movement and felt satisfaction rise. They were running. He ordered pursuit. That was when the first half of the human fleet reappeared behind him. They had not fled. They had gone around. Now Draxler's wedge was caught between two human forces with no room to reform. No warning followed. No declaration. No signal of engagement. The humans just opened fire from every angle that at once. Railgun slugs tore through shields. Missile swarms flooded sensor grids. Plasma strikes hit engines, communications arrays, and point defense systems in a carefully chosen order. The first 30 seconds broke the entire rhythm of the battle. That Draxler's flagship took 17 direct hits. Its shields collapsed. Its engines failed. Half its command systems went dead. The fleet commander stood in stunned disbelief as centuries of accepted battlefield logic vanished around him. The humans were not fighting improperly. They were fighting efficiently. The battle lasted 4 hours to be the end of it. The Valerian fleet was shattered. Ships drifted powerless through debris fields. Others burned. Others had turned on emergency drives and fled in disorder. The survivors reported the same thing over and over again. The humans moved too fast. They adapted too quickly. They attacked weak points before the Valorians even understood those weak points had been exposed. For the first time in generations, Imperial officers began using a word normally reserved for disaster. Impossible. The Empire responded by sending one of its proudest military formations, the Deathless Legion. For 3,000 years, the Legion had never lost a battle. They were the Empire's greatest ground force, elite soldiers trained from youth and shaped by victory after victory. Their armor was legendary. Their discipline was perfect. Their confidence absolute. They were sent to retake strategic ground after the defeat at Arcturus. The humans sent Marines, not legendary chosen warriors, not sacred Imperial killers, just Marines. When the Deathless Legion learned this, many considered it an insult. Then the battle began, and the insult changed direction. The Marines did not fight honorably. They did not stand in open formation and meet force with force. They hid explosives and wreckage. They faked retreats into prepared kill zones. They used false distress beacons. They jammed communications, trapped movement corridors, poisoned visibility with smoke and light interference, and struck command units first. They turned terrain into weapons. They turned confusion into weapons. They turned fear into weapons. That in one ruined industrial sector, an entire Legion strike unit entered what looked like an abandoned transit complex. That IT was not abandoned. The humans had lured them there, sealed exits, cut local gravity in selected zones, then attacked from angles the Legion had never trained to defend. By the time the Valorians realized the fight was unwinnable, it was already over. By the end of the campaign, out of 5,000 Deathless Legion soldiers, only 300 were left alive enough to surrender. The rest were dead, missing, or too broken to continue. One surviving Legion commander was brought before a human Marine captain named Rodriguez. That he was pale, shaking, barely able to stand. "What are you?" he whispered. Captain Rodriguez had scars across one side of her face and exhaustion in her eyes. She lit a cigarette, took a slow drag, and looked at him like a woman who had been forced to remember something she hated. "We're humans," she said, "and you interrupted our vacation." News of the defeat spread across the Empire. T first. Many refused to believe it. The Deathless Legion destroyed? Impossible. Fleet Commander Draxer beaten? Impossible. Human production numbers rising every day? Impossible. Then more losses came. And more. And more. The pattern became impossible to deny. Humans were not just winning battles. They were dominating them. Every time the Empire tried a new tactic, the humans answered it almost immediately. Every time the Empire shifted formations, supply methods, defensive arrangements, or assault doctrine, the humans seemed to already know what was coming. Valerian strategists could not understand it. How were the humans learning so quickly? The answer was simple. They were not learning. They were remembering. Human military archives contained 10,000 years of recorded conflict. They had studied their own wars in obsessive detail. Every success, every mistake, every ambush, every collapse, every logistical failure, every surprise. When the Empire tried flanking attacks, humans countered them because humans had been using flanking for thousands of years. When the Empire tried psychological warfare, humans barely reacted because they had practically written the subject. When the Empire attacked supply lines, humans answered with supply networks so huge and flexible that whole armies could be rerouted across systems without slowing momentum. The Empire kept discovering the same thing in new ways. There was almost nothing they could do to the humans that humans had not once done to themselves. And done worse, as the defeats mounted, a new problem appeared among Valerian troops. First, their commanders thought it was simple fear. Then they realized it was deeper than that. Soldiers stopped sleeping. Some panicked at harmless sounds. Some froze during combat drills. Some refused orders to return to the front. Others became violent without warning, then went silent for hours. Valerian medicine had never really studied this condition. Their wars had been too structured, too limited, too controlled. They had no real language for what was happening. Ironically, the ones who first identified it were human doctors treating captured Valerian prisoners. The diagnosis was cleared-up post-traumatic stress disorder. The mighty soldiers of the Empire were breaking under the pressure of fighting humans. One Valerian survivor sat in a medical ward, staring at the floor, while a translator recorded his words. "They don't fight like soldiers," he whispered. "How do they fight?" the human doctor asked. The Valorian scales trembled, like demons. He swallowed. "They're everywhere. They never come from where you expect. They retreat and then attack from behind. They smile while lying to you. They send false surrender calls. They send friendly signals that carry viruses. They turn light into a weapon, sound into a weapon, fear into a weapon. Everything becomes a weapon with them." The doctor did not look surprised. The Valerian lifted his shaking hands and whispered, "How do you defeat something that sees no line between war and the world around it?" No one answered, because by then, the answer was becoming obvious. You didn't point 6 months after the attack on New Toronto. The map of the galaxy had changed. Human fleets had pushed deep into Imperial territory. Conquered worlds were being liberated one by one. Former subject species, once held down by Valerian rule, were now rising up, joining the human side, sabotaging Imperial lines, opening gates, turning on governors, and feeding intelligence to the advancing fleets. The Empire was not just losing. It was coming apart from the inside. The Supremacy Council met in emergency session. The same chamber that had once echoed with certainty was now filled with panic. Council members spoke over one another. They were primitives. They had 47 systems. This should have been impossible. An intelligence officer stood before the council, reading from a rapidly updating display. They now control over 300 systems, directly or through allied liberation zones. Every world, they free adds industrial capacity, manpower, and local support. They are moving faster than we can track. Vormix sat slumped in his throne, looking older than Krelix had ever seen him. "Where is Fleet Commander Draxer?" "Dead, sir." "Admiral Czar?" He surrendered after encirclement. The Deathless Legion? Silence. That silence said enough that Vormika's claws gripped the edge of his throne. Then, at last, he looked toward Ambassador Krellix. Krellix had been silent until now that he stepped forward slowly. I warned you, he said. N01 argued. N01 could. The humans warned us too, he continued. They told us to leave. They told us to forget them. We laughed. We dismissed them. We thought peace had made them harmless. Vormik lifted his eyes. What are they? He asked weakly. Krellix answered without hesitation. They are what happens when a species survives 10,000 years of war against itself. They are what happens when predators learn discipline. They are what happens when something dangerous chooses peace and is forced to remember why that choice was necessary. The council chamber was dead quiet. Finally, Vormik asked the only question left. Can we still win? Krellix looked at the 12 faces around him. For the first time, they looked like what they had made others feel for thousands of years, small, afraid. No, he said. We never could. No one spoke after that, because all that remained now was the question none of them wanted to ask aloud. Would the humans accept surrender, or would they do to the Empire what the Empire had done to 847 other species? Outside the chamber, alarms began to sound across the throne world. A fleet had entered the home system. Human ships, thousands of them. The war was over. It had taken the humans only 6 months to break what the Valorians had built over 12,000 years. And now, they had come for the capital. The human fleet surrounded the Valorian throne world like a steel storm. More than 2,000 warships hung in orbit, covering the planet from every angle. Their weapons were locked. Their formations were tight. Their lines were calm and precise. They did not need to fire. Their presence said enough. Inside the council chamber, the Supremacy Council waited for the N01 spoke much now. There were no grand speeches left, N0 promises of imperial strength, N0 talk of victory. Only silence. Then a message arrived. An officer stepped into the chamber, pale and shaking. High Chancellor, he said, we have received a request from the human fleet. Vormik looked up slowly. What kind of request? The officer swallowed. Captain Sarah Chun requests permission to land and negotiate terms. For a moment, no one reacted. Then one council member frowned. Negotiate. Another hissed softly. Why negotiate? They already won. Perhaps they want us to beg first. Another said bitterly. Krellix stood very still. He remembered the woman in the docking bay. The coffee container in her hand. The laughter. The warning. Go home. Forget you ever met us. Pleased that he looked at the others. There is only one way to find out. Let them land. Vormik hesitated, but he had no real power left to protect. N0 fleet. N0 shield of certain. N0 illusion of control. At last, he nodded once. Let them land. Sarah Chun arrived less than an hour later. She did not come with an army. She did not bring guards, weapons, or ceremonial armor. She walked into the chamber with a small diplomatic team, wearing the same simple jumpsuit Krellix remembered from their first meeting. And in one hand, she carried the same metal coffee thermos. That detail unsettled him more than a war fleet, because it meant she had not changed. Not really. Not even after crushing an empire. Sarah stepped into the center of the room and looked around at the 12 council members, and fear, and pride, and cruelty. Just tired eyes. Thank you for meeting with me, she said. Her voice was calm, polite, almost ordinary. Vormik stared down at her from his throne. You are here to accept our surrender, he said. State your terms. Sarah blinked once. Then she said, Actually, we are not here to take your surrender. Silence filled the chamber. Vormik frowned. You are not. No. One of the council members leaned forward sharply. Then why are you here? Sarah set her thermos down on the table, opened a datapad, and said the last thing anyone in that room expected to hear. We are here to offer you something else. Krellix narrowed his eyes. Sarah touched the pad, and a document appeared on the central display. At the top were 4 words. Galactic Community. Sarah looked up. We want to build a federation of equal species. No conquest. No empire. No ruling class above the rest. Shared defense. Shared science. Shared trade. Shared exploration. A system where no one species dominates the others. The council members stared at her. Vormika's voice came slowly now, heavy with disbelief. You defeated us, and you are offering partnership? Yes. Why? It was Krelix who asked that question. IT came out quieter than he expected. Sarah looked at him. For a moment, her expression softened. Then she sat down without waiting for permission, leaned back slightly, and took a sip of coffee. Because ruling an empire sounds exhausting, she said, and a few council members looked offended. Sarah lifted one hand slightly. That was only half a joke. Her tone changed. The warmth stayed, but the humor faded. The real reason, she said, is that we are scared. That confused them even more. Vormik frowned. Scared of what? You destroyed our fleets. You broke our armies. You have surrounded our world. Yes, Sarah said quietly. And that's exactly the problem. She stood and walked toward the great window. Beyond it, the lights of the capital spread across the planet like veins of gold. Far above them, human warships glimmered in orbit. Sarah looked out at them before continuing. For 200 years, humans worked very hard to become something better than what we used to be. We put away our old habits. We stopped solving problems with war. We turned toward art, medicine, science, engineering, exploration. We built lives around creation instead of destruction. She turned back toward the council. Then you attacked us. No one answered. You attacked our civilians. You bombed a colony. You gave us an enemy. And in 6 months, we remembered everything. She let those words settle. How to organize for total war. How to turn factories into shipyards. How to break armies. How to outproduce, outmaneuver, and outfight an empire that thought it understood violence. Her eyes moved across the chamber, and the worst part was how easy it was. Krelix felt cold, because that, more than anything else, matched what he had seen in the human records. Not joy in war, not love of battle. Something worse. Familiarity. Sarah touched the display again. A new set of numbers appeared. Human military dead. 50,000, then another line. Valerian military and civilian dead. 2,300,000. The chamber stayed silent. Krelix read the numbers twice. He already knew the losses were terrible, but seeing them beside each other made something inside him sink. For every one of are dead, Sarah said. 46 of yours died. Vormik lifted his head slowly. Then that proves it. You are superior warriors. Sarah shook her head. No, it proves we are dangerous. General Kowalski, who had come with the delegation, stepped forward then. He looked older than ever, like the war had taken another decade from him. We held back, he said. The council looked at him. He continued. We could have burned your worlds. We could have targeted your cities. We could have starved systems, shattered atmospheres, collapsed moons, and ended this in the cruelest possible way. We had the means. Many argued for it. Krelix believed him. The calm certainty in the old human's voice left no room for doubt. But we did not do that, Kowalski said. Because every day we were fighting, we were afraid of what it was doing to us. Sarah nodded once. That is why we are here. If this continues, we win. But if it goes on long enough, we start getting comfortable with it. She let out a slow breath. And if humans get comfortable with war again, that becomes a problem for everyone. The words sat in the chamber like a weight. Vormik looked at the display, then at Sarah. You were saying you fear your own victory. Yes. No hesitation. No shame. Just truth. We know what we are capable of, Sarah said. That's why we built peace so carefully. We know what happens when humans forget restraint. We almost destroyed ourselves once. We do not want to become that version of ourselves again. She touched the display, returning it to the charter. This initiative is our answer. A structure bigger than war. Something worth building. Something worth protecting. Something that keeps all of us busy with better goals. One council member finally spoke. And if we refuse? Sarah looked at him. Then we leave. That answer surprised everyone. Vormik leaned forward. Leave? Yes, Sarah said. We go back to our territory. You go back to yours. We draw a boundary. We watch each other. We stay ready. But we do not continue the war unless you force us to. Krelix frowned. After everything that happened, You would still allow us to remain? Sarah looked at him for a moment before answering. We checked your history. Your empire was built on conquest. That is all you have known for thousands of years. You were taught domination, hierarchy, fear, expansion. But a lot of the species you conquered were not warriors. They were builders, farmers, scientists, traders. They never wanted your empire. They only wanted to live. General Kowalski's voice hardened. We have already begun liberating your subject worlds. Most of them do not want revenge. They want stability, safety, a future. Sarah nodded. They will join the initiative whether you do or not. The question is whether you want to be part of what comes next or be left behind by it. The council began speaking among themselves in low, tense voices. Krellix listened. Some were afraid, some were ashamed, some were still angry. But no one believed they could return to the old way. Not after what they had seen. Not after what the humans had done. Vormik looked at Krellix. What do you think? The ambassador stepped forward slowly. This was the same chamber where his caution had once been mocked. The same chamber where power had meant never admitting weakness. Now weakness was all around them. But perhaps honesty was not weakness. Perhaps it never had been. He looked at Sarah-chan, the human who had laughed at an empire, the human who had warned them, the human who had come back, not for revenge, but for something harder. Mercy. I support the proposal, Krellix said. Several council members turned toward him. He kept speaking. We were wrong about the humans. Wrong about peace. Wrong about strength. We thought power meant making others kneel. We thought fear was the same as respect. We thought conquest made us great. He looked around the chamber. It did not. It made us blind. No one interrupted. This is a chance, he said, to become something other than what we have always been. Silence followed. Then, one by one, the council members gave their answer. Not proudly. Not happily, but honestly. Yes, 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 until finally only Vormik remained. The High Chancellor sat still for a long time. Then he rose from his throne. His voice, when it came, was quiet. The Valerian Empire accepts your proposal. We will join the Galactic Community Initiative. Sarah did not smile right away. For a brief moment, she only closed her eyes like someone setting down a great weight. Then she looked at him and gave a small, tired smile. Good, she said. That was the better choice. She walked toward him and extended her hand. Vormik looked at it uncertainly. Sarah noticed and said, It's a human custom. We shake hands to seal an agreement. Vormik slowly reached out with his much larger clawed hand and took hers. Her grip was firm, steady, not weak in the slightest. Welcome to the community, Sarah said. And for the first time in 12,000 years, the Valerian Empire entered a future not built on conquest. 10 years later, Ambassador Krellix walked through the central station of the Galactic Community Initiative. IT was one of the largest structures ever built in known space. And unlike the old Imperial monuments, it had not been built to frighten anyone. IT had been built to welcome them. The station stretched across orbit like a shining web of metal, glass, crystal, and living architecture. Every major species of the initiative had helped design it. Valerian arches rose beside human geometric towers. Corin crystal corridors reflected light in soft colors. Trellan spiral gardens climbed through open public chambers. Transit lines hummed quietly through the structure, carrying diplomats, workers, traders, scientists, and travelers from one end of the station to the other. For the first time in his long life, Krellix lived inside something that did not exist because of conquest. IT existed because species had agreed to build it together. The thought still felt strange sometimes, but no longer wronged as he moved through the station. He passed a group of young Valorians and humans arguing cheerfully over a strategy game. A few halls later, he saw traders from 3 worlds discussing shipping routes over lunch. Farther on, he passed school children from 6 species on a guided tour, staring wide-eyed at a memorial wall that listed the worlds lost during the Human-Valorian War. Not worlds destroyed, worlds remembered. That, too, had been a human idea. Remember the cost. Build something better. Krellix had not fully understood it at first. Now he did. He reached the main conference chamber and paused before entering that a new species had been discovered on the far edge of map space. First contact had not gone well. Their first messages were aggressive. Their broadcasts were full of threats, boasts, and military posturing. According to the reports, they had conquered 40 nearby systems and already believed themselves to be the greatest power in the region. Krellix had read the transcripts. Yes, he did. He had felt a strange and deeply uncomfortable sense of familiarity. Inside the chamber, Sarah-chan was already waiting. She was older now. There was gray in her hair, and the long years showed around her eyes. But the eyes themselves had not changed. They still carried the same sharp humor, the same patient intelligence, the same quiet tiredness of someone who had seen too much and still chosen kindness. She looked up as he entered. "Ready for this?" she asked. Krellix let out a slow breath. "As ready as I will ever be." Sarah held up a file pad. Their name is the Krather Alliance. Expansionist. Military culture. Strong belief in their own superiority. They've already sent 3 messages demanding formal recognition of their dominance. Krellix gave a dry sound that was almost a laugh. "Yes," he said. "That does sound familiar." Sarah smiled faintly. "Think they'll listen?" "Probably not at first," Krellix said. "Species like that rarely do." "True." The chamber lights dimmed slightly as the main screen came alive. The Krather delegation appeared. They were insect-like, with long armored bodies, sharp mandibles, and black reflective eyes. Their leader stood in front, wearing battle markings across his chest plates. Behind him were banners, weapons, and soldiers posed in dramatic silence. Krellix felt a very old memory stir. The giant ship, the skulls, the speech, the certainty, the belief that fear and greatness were the same thing. The Krather leader began speaking in a harsh, clicking language, translated instantly by the chamber systems. "We are the Krather Alliance. We have conquered 40 systems. Our fleets are unmatched. Our armies are unstoppable. You will recognize our superiority or face destruction." Sarah looked at Krellix. Krellix looked at Sarah. For one brief moment, both of them tried very hard to remain professional. Then Sarah's mouth twitched. Krellix felt his own expression crack, and both of them started laughing. Not loudly at first, just enough to make the Krather leader stiffen in anger. "You dare mock us?" he demanded. "We have conquered 40 systems. We have broken every enemy before us." Sarah lifted a hand, trying to recover. "I'm sorry," she said, still half laughing. "I really am. It's just, you remind us of someone." Krellix straightened with effort, though amusement still flickered across his face. "Yes," he said. "Someone we knew rather well." The Krather leader's mandibles clicked sharply. "We're not here for jokes. We are here to offer you one chance to submit." Sarah finally composed herself and leaned forward. "Okay," she said. "Let's do this properly." She touched the display that a map of GCI space appeared behind her. Thousands of systems glowed across the stars. Trade routes, research zones, defense networks, shared colonies, and construction sites filled the display with layers of living cooperation. "We represent over 800 member species," Sarah said. "We control thousands of systems. We have built stellar-scale infrastructure, planetary defense grids, shared research networks, and the largest civilian industrial base in recorded history." The Krather leader was silent. Sarah continued in the same calm voice. "We are currently building our second ring world. We operate permanent science stations inside environments your people still classify as impossible. And we have been at peace for 10 years. That seemed to confuse him. "Peace," he said. "Then you are weak." Krellix's expression changed. The amusement faded. His voice, when it came, was calm and serious. "No," he said. "It means we are strong enough that we do not need to prove it." The Krather leader bristled. "You speak boldly for a people who hide behind councils and treaties." Krellix stepped slightly forward. 10 years earlier, he would have answered with pride, with threat, with performance. Now he answered with memory. 10 years ago, he said, "My empire had conquered 847 species. We believed ourselves eternal. We believed no one could stand against us. We believe peace in others meant weakness. He paused. The Krather leader said nothing. Then Sarah spoke, and then they met humanity. The Krather leader's gaze moved toward her. What happened? He asked. Krellix gave a small, humorless smile. I am still here, he said. That should tell you something. Sarah folded her hands. My people laughed at the Valerian Empire the first time we met them, she said. Not because they were harmless, because we understood something they didn't. And what is that? The Krather leader asked. Sarah's voice softened. The most dangerous species is not the one that loves war. It is the one that is too good at it to safely enjoy it anymore. The chamber went quiet. Krellix picked up the thought and carried it forward. And the wisest species, he said, is the one that learns that lesson before history teaches it by force. The Krather leader's posture shifted. Just slightly. It was a small change, but Krellix noticed it. Uncertainty. The beginning of it. Are you threatening us? The Krather leader demanded. Sarah shook her head. No, she said. We are warning you. Those words hung in the air. Krellix remembered hearing them for the first time in a docking bay, too proud to understand them. Sarah went on. We are offering you the same choice we once offered the Valerian Empire. Join the community. Work with others. Build instead of conquer. Or go home, redraw your border, and pretend this conversation never happened. And if we attack? The Krather leader asked. Sarah did not smile this time. Her face became very still. Then you will learn what the Valorians learned, she said. But I truly hope you do not make us prove that lesson again. Krellix added quietly. We have been at peace for 10 years. We would like very much to stay that way. The Krather leader looked from Sarah to Krellix and back again. What he saw there was not boasting, not fear, not cruelty. That it was something harder to read. Point 2 survivors of a war. Neither wanted repeated. Point 2 people who understood exactly what violence could do and exactly what it could wake up. We will consider your offer, the Krather leader said at last. Good, Sarah replied. That is the smart choice. The screen went dark. Silence remained in the chamber for a few seconds. Then Krellix exhaled slowly. Do you think they will accept? Sarah picked up her coffee thermos and turned it in her hands. Probably, she said. Most do after they read the historical brief. Krellix gave a dry laugh. Yes, human history tends to be persuasive. Sarah smiled. Terrifying but persuasive. They stood together in front of the dark screen. Through the wide windows behind them, the central station glowed in the light of the nearby star. Ships moved in steady lines. Trade convoys passed military patrols. Research vessels headed toward the outer sectors. Civilian traffic filled the lanes once used only by war fleets. Life, movement, purposed at a future that had not existed before the war. Krellix looked out at it all and thought about the empire he had once served. The rituals, the skulls, the fear, the pride. The centuries spent mistaking domination for greatness. Then he thought about what had replaced it. Not perfection, not some impossible dream where no one would ever make the same mistakes again, but something better, the system built by species who knew exactly what destruction looked like and had chosen, together, to build anyway. That he turned to Sarah. You know, he said, 10 years ago, if someone had told me I would one day help calm an aggressive young empire beside a human carrying coffee, I would have called them insane. Sarah laughed softly. That's fair. Krellix's expression became thoughtful. When we first met, I thought your laughter was disrespect. Sarah looked at him. And now? Now I understand it, he said. You were not laughing because we were powerful. You were laughing because we were small and did not know it yet. Sarah was quiet for a moment. Then she nodded. We were also a little horrified, she said. You were basically threatening a species that had spent 10,000 years mastering war and then spent 200 years trying to recover from being that species. Krellix let out a slow breath. Yes, he said. In hindsight, that does seem unwise. Sarah smiled again, but this time it was gentler. We all get wiser if we survive long enough. Krellix looked back out at the station at the humans and the Valorians, the species his empire had once ruled, now moving freely through shared halls. Then he said the thing he had come to believe more than anything else. Perhaps real strength was never in conquest. Sarah raised an eyebrow. Took you long enough. He gave her a look. She sipped her coffee. Then, after a moment, she answered more seriously. Real strength is knowing exactly how much damage you could do and choosing not to. Krellix considered that. Then he nodded once. Yes, that was it. Not the ability to destroy, the ability to stop. Not the hunger to rule, the discipline to build. Not the love of war, the wisdom to fear what war awakens. Far away, the Krather Alliance would soon begin its own research. It would study the records, read the histories, learn what happened to the Valerian Empire, learn what happened when humanity was pushed too far. Maybe they would choose wisely, maybe they would not. But if they did choose peace, it would not be because they were weak that IT would be, because they were learning the same truth that had changed the galaxy. That the most dangerous civilization is not the one marching proudly toward war, that IT is the one that has already mastered war and now understands exactly why it must be avoided. And across the great station of the Galactic Community Initiative, life continued. Not because the galaxy had become harmless, but because, for now, enough of it had become wise.